For those of you who I have not met, my name is Eisha Armstrong. I am the co-founder, executive chair of Vecteris. And like I said, just very excited to be here with you today to share from our vantage point what we're learning about how professional services firms are successfully using AI, not just GenAI, but AI in general, to not just improve the efficiency of their operations, but also to grow. So very, very excited to be here with you today. I do think we've got a unique vantage point in that we are not selling AI technology to professional services firms, but we are advising them on how to think about the use of technology, whether AI or otherwise, can be used to scale the delivery of their services, or what we like to call productize their services. And specifically, as it relates to AI, we've had, at this point, hundreds of conversations with leaders of professional services firms about how they're using AI to transform their businesses. And we get to look across the spectrum of professions. So law firms, accounting firms, architecture, engineering, management consulting, IT services, BPO, PR, marketing, and so on, and see how those different subsegments within professional services are both using or planning to use AI. And certainly we are seeing a very wide range of strategies and investment decisions. In addition to these conversations that we have one-on-one with leaders, we've also had the opportunity to convene roundtables of leaders to talk to one another and share what they're learning in this very fast-paced world and how they're applying the technology, again, not just to become more efficient in their business, but to grow their professional services firms. So to help you today, we're going to cover three different topics that's come from the work that we've been doing across the past year. First of all, we're going to talk about the very wide range of opportunities that we're seeing to use AI in B2B services organizations. And again, this is not just about productivity. Then we'll talk about how to select the best opportunities to use AI in your firms. And then finally, how to ensure successful organizational adoption. So that's the agenda. I will take Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But we will be waiting until the end to do Q&A. All right, so let's start first with where we are now. Hang on. Advancing my slides. Great. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so this is a great chart that I saw, actually took from the Wall Street Journal from last week. And it's research that Oliver Wyman did across last year, the consulting organization Oliver Wyman, where they looked at use of specifically Gen AI across different industries. Both at a point in time in June 2023, that's the light blue line, and then November 2023, so about 4 months ago. And you can see some interesting things. So first of all, across the board, across all different types of industries, use of Gen AI is increasing. Technology is certainly leading the way, with now well over 60% of employees using it at least once a week, followed by financial services, media, telecom, and then fourth on the list is professional services. So if you look there, fourth on the list, back in June of 2023, we were probably looking at about 30% of our employees using it at least once a week. And then in November, it was above the 50% mark. Hopefully it's continued to increase, and this is worldwide data. So I thought this was interesting just to show the increase in adoption. In terms of what we're seeing at Vecteris, certainly last year we were watching leaders ride the hype curve. And now make some pretty big investments and pretty big announcements. And now we're seeing them enter what's commonly called that trough of disillusionment. as they realize how difficult it is to get adoption. So, certainly we don't have, we have got above 50% adoption in professional services, but not 100%. And this is just kind of looking at once a week usage. Also, what we're seeing is a lot of conversations around fundamentally rethinking how we create value within professional services firms. And how can we shift the way that we think as organizational leaders, that we deliver value not only through the human expertise that we have in our organizations, but also through technology. And that is a real significant mind shift change for a lot of the organizations that we work with. And many of them are starting to see gaps in capabilities among their workforce in order to make this shift. And certainly we'll talk about that. So that is one of the things that, at least based on the leaders that we're talking to, is getting in the way of getting full adoption of use of AI where appropriate. The other thing certainly is still the cost of technology. That is starting, again, early days, starting to come down. But that's another impediment that we're seeing to full adoption, in addition to just not having a clear strategy yet about how to use it. So again, today we're going to touch on what are the different opportunities that we're seeing. What are some ways to decide which opportunities to pursue to make sure that it's aligned with your strategy, aligned with your resources? And then finally, what are the change management requirements for this type of shift? Because that's a big part in kind of getting those adoption numbers up even further. Certainly, one of the things that we can say with confidence is that AI is already reshaping the professional services industry in many, many exciting ways. And we think here at Vecteris, the most exciting way is at a catalyst for growth. But I do think it is important to acknowledge that based on the advancements that we've seen in the technology, again, especially across the last 18 months, is that a large part of core knowledge work in professional services can now be automated. And in fact, some people are talking about it in terms of the dawn of a new era in professional services. And if you know me well, you know I don't like to use hyperbole, but here I do think it is appropriate. So let me first kind of give you some context, and then we'll go through the graphic that you see here on the page. Now, we all know that a large part of professional services is providing knowledge and expertise to our clients. But we're now seeing that not only can we capture and categorize that knowledge more effectively using technology, but AI allows us to access more knowledge much faster, and then do something that we used to think only humans could do, and that is to make inferences and judgments about that knowledge. And that's what really makes this different from previous technology and previous digital innovation. And that's why I think calling this the dawn of a new era in professional services is not hyperbole. Because the technology is very different, because it can make inferences and judgments, not just allow us to categorize and access knowledge more efficiently. And in fact, we do believe, as do many others, that professional services, well, up until recently, has been one of the last industries that has not been disrupted by technology. Now, a significant part of professional services work can be disrupted by technology. So let's look now at the graphic here that we see on the page. This is research that was done by the National Bureau of Economic Research last spring, where they looked at estimates of time and labor across many different industries. And they found that of all industries, professional services has the highest amount of work. That's that 41% dot that you see there in the upper right, that can now be automated using generative AI. And this isn't just software developers using tools like GitHub's Copilot to write code, Certainly that is part of what's in that professional services number, but this is also professionals across legal, management, consulting, accounting, architecture, engineering, marketing, using generative AI to not only improve the speed, but also the quality of their research, their analysis, and creation of a large part of their core deliverables. And we do believe that the leading service providers are actively experimenting with how generative AI allows them to offer solutions to solve new client problems that they couldn't do so previously. So certainly taking beyond this productivity improvement here and thinking more about growth. And the professional services leaders that we work with believe that the timing for this transformation is actually really good. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide here. So one advisory services firm leader that I was talking to shared with me, he said, Eisha, traditional professional services delivery through arms and legs has gotten a lot harder, and we're paying more money for scarcer talent, and it's increasingly hard to maintain quality as we grow. So again, if we've been in traditional professional services, providing expertise, arms and legs capacity in exchange for money, so time and materials in exchange for money, then talent has been the rate limiting factor on our growth. And professional services talent, again, across the board, across all of those different sub-industries that I talked about, is still really hard to find and to keep. In fact, we do have pretty low retention rates if you look at professional services across all different industries. But the good news here is that as we think about this new technology, automating more core knowledge work can reduce talent as that rate limiting factor on our growth. Another trend that we've been talking about, you've probably heard us talk about in the past, that we think is making the timing for this type of disruption really good, is that professional services customer loyalty is declining. We've had in the past the folks from DCM Insights on our webinars, and they've talked about this data that has come out of their research. So what they found is that within the next 5 years, repeat buyers of traditional professional services are expected to decline to just over 30%. Again, repeat buyers will only be about 30% of our revenue. Now, contrast that with 5 years ago, where repeat buyers were 76% of our revenue. So that's a significant decline. And really, it could be existential for a lot of us who, as we think about where we're going to get our revenue year after year, a large part of that is coming from repeat buyers. But the fact of the matter is that more and more buyers of professional services are professionalizing how they procure it and running them through procurement processes that put the likelihood of a repeat buy lower than it has been in the past. And again, we do think, though, let's look at the silver lining, that leveraging AI to develop solutions to new customer problems could help us find new paths for growth and combat that declining loyalty. So again, in summary, two things that we think professional services firms have been grappling with that have been challenges: talent being a rate limiting factor on growth, and declining loyalty by existing customers. That the introduction of generative AI can help us with both. It can reduce the reliance on that hard to find talent, and it can give us new paths to grow with new customers and introduce new solutions, which again is what we're most excited about at Vecteris. So let's dive into the first thing I said we would talk about, and that is, what are all of the different use cases that we're seeing right now in professional services? So first one, hopefully you are all well aware of this one, but that is increasing the efficiency of our knowledge work, also known as automating the mundane. So this is, I think, the one that gets certainly the most amount of attention. Certainly it has across the last 12 to 18 months, and it's where most of the most well-known use cases are. So this is where we're automating recurring tedious tasks to help our professionals get more done in less time. And they typically include three categories. So the first one's research. The second one is analysis. And then the third one is content or deliverable creation. That could be reports, memos, things like that. So think of, for example, accounting audits that used to require hundreds of hours scouring spreadsheets, doing exhaustive things, market research, doing exhaustive market research, or consultants who are spending all this time doing stakeholder interviews and reviewing and summarizing. Perhaps vendor analyses that we may do, document discovery that attorneys may do, and so on. So this value proposition that we see now with AI of help me do my job faster is certainly part of the value that we're seeing here to reduce all of that time that I talked about. And it's part of what you see there on the right around these custom-built GPTs that large firms are, quite frankly, falling all over themselves to announce and show that they're keeping pace with the opportunities presented by GenAI. These are all designed to reduce time on simple, repetitive tasks. And certainly the software that we use, I mentioned GitHub. Hopefully you're well aware of Microsoft's Copilot, GPT-4 for Teams. Those of us in the legal field, it's being introduced into all the legal research tools, also being incorporated into software tools that we use day in and day out. And again, the use case here is reduced time spent on simple, repetitive tasks. Now, currently, we will say and acknowledge, and most of the firms that we work with will also share this, that the research, analysis, and content still needs to be reviewed and edited by humans, but the time that it takes to do the tasks is dramatically shrinking. So, for example, one large market research firm that we work with found that creating market research reports using generative AI just by itself could be done at 10 times the speed of when a team of humans were creating the reports. But it was at about 75% of the quality of the human reports, so only about 75% of the quality. But if they used AI-generated reports with then employee review and editing of those reports, they could create those reports at 6 times the speed as human only and 110% of the quality of human only. So again, not only faster, but also better because they were accessing more information. And a lot of the leaders that we talk to is perhaps saying that perhaps also giving new ideas that their employees only would not have thought of. So that leads us to the second category of use case, which is improving the quality of our knowledge work, or like we like to call here, elevating the importance of our expertise. So again, certainly a big payoff of all of this is automating our core knowledge work, to then free us up as professionals to spend more time doing more complex analysis, more complex thinking for our clients. For example, there was Thomson Reuters recently did a survey of both tax, accounting, and legal professionals. And 72% of them said that generative AI will help them provide more consultative advice. It also, for those of us who like spending time with our clients, it gives us more time to spend time with them to better understand their needs, their aspirations, their motivations, build relationships, align to different stakeholders across our client organizations, and also mentor junior professionals. So it frees us up to do those things that are uniquely human, but also improve the quality of our work. Now, I will mention I was talking to someone who I think may be on the call this morning earlier this week about this advantage of freeing up our time to do things that are uniquely human. And he wisely pointed out that there may be some professionals in our organizations that don't like doing these new activities and actually, quite enjoyed doing some of those more mundane, repetitive tasks. And that is certainly a change management issue that we will talk about. There may be some people in the organization that don't get quite as excited about this, and it's important to acknowledge it, and also plan for it. The other thing, and this is also mentioned here on the slides, we've got more time. We also have more information because with the introduction of AI and the data that's required in order to train the AI, we get more information than we've had previously at our fingertips. Some people call this democratizing access to information and expertise in a way that, quite frankly, we've not seen before. So this allows us to perhaps better identify unspoken customer needs, respond a lot faster when there are market changes or regulatory shifts. It can allow us to improve the accuracy and consistency of things like business or risks forecasts. So it's not just that we have more time, but we may have more information that allows us to do better analysis, better consultation for our clients. And again, while there may be some professionals who are not excited about using their time in these new ways, I think by and large, and most leaders would agree with me, that the most common motivator for professionals in their working lives is to deliver high quality advice to our clients. And AI can make this possible, again, not by only giving us more time, but by giving us better information as well. So the third category of use case, moving along, is to improve our workflow. If you saw the session I did with David DeWolf, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, from Knownwell, we talked a lot about using AI to improve operational efficiency. And the use cases that he talked about there about using AI to spot patterns in our own business. He used the use case of identifying clients that might be at risk, for example, by crawling through all of our data, would be an example of using AI to improve operational efficiency. There are also many tools being introduced right now that help streamline processes, remove bureaucracy, reduce handoffs, administration, things like that. One example, I've got this up here on the slide that I like to point to, is this UK-based company called Luminance. And they are a legal tech company that's working to really dramatically speed up the contract negotiation process and reduce the delays that are often caused by people not just getting to something in their inbox or being super busy on another task. So it's not just doing the legal work, but it's speeding up the handoffs. And I think that's really exciting and a different way to think about the potential for AI and improving the productivity of our professionals, and also our ability to quickly respond and react to client needs. But the most exciting opportunity, and certainly the one we're talking about the most at Vecteris, is the last one, which is new growth opportunities or pioneering new solutions for our clients. And this is where firms realize that AI allows them to solve problems for customers that they couldn't solve before. And it's not only because we have more time or we have more information to spot those new opportunities, but it's also because it's an invitation for us to rethink our business models, which I'll talk about. So the most common new growth opportunity that we've seen services organizations pursue, at least across the past 12 months, no surprise, is helping their clients unlock the value of AI. So we're professional services firms. What is our spin on how you can use AI in your business? You can see here on the right-hand side of the slide, an example from the PR firm. It's kind of obvious when you're thinking about the big four, IT services, talking about standing up new AI practices. But this is a PR firm, Weber Shandwick, that recently created a new solution to help chief communications officers that they serve through their PR services to better understand and experiment with AI. And I would say this is where, unfortunately, the large firms have the biggest advantage. So it's really unfair to the mid-market firms that we work with, because the large firms are the ones that have the size to get access to tech providers' early access programs, the budget to afford them, and they also have more data to effectively train in-house models. So something to keep in mind there in terms of your ability to access those things. The other really exciting use case is the one you see on the left, where we start thinking about using AI to serve new users or new markets that before have not been economically feasible to serve with a more custom service, human-intensive solution. So the example that you see here on this page, I know some of you who are on the call are very familiar with this, is a marketing firm. One of their services was to create thought leadership content, so speeches, articles, and specifically for chief innovation officers who were trying to improve how they talk about new innovations coming out of their R&D labs. And they found that their clients wanted to democratize access to those services, not just have this be something that the chief innovation officer had, people to write content for them, but that everyone in their R&D group or other parts of the organization could access. And that their training programs were not proving really effective or effective enough in improving the writing and storytelling skills of their professionals. So using generative AI and what this firm knows about what they've learned about good storytelling around innovation and audience context, they created a product called Narratize to help all managers and above or below at their clients become better storytellers and thought leaders. So that is one example of many, many that we've seen of organizations that we work with thinking about how can we use GenAI to either serve more people at our client organizations, perhaps serve a more price-sensitive client, perhaps if we've only been serving large enterprise, is there now an opportunity to go mid-market? But also, are there new problems that we can solve? And I think, if there's anything that you take away from today's session, it's that focusing only on knowledge work efficiency undersells the potential to create entirely new opportunities for our businesses to transform and create value and grow. So again, that's why we're so excited about this at Vecteris, because this is not just a technology that allows us to be more efficient. It's a technology that allows us to serve new markets, solve new problems. The problem with that, though, and the stumbling block that we've seen, is that most people in our organization, when they think about this technology, are wired to think only about efficiency and productivity. And thinking about new growth opportunities, new solutions opportunities, is not a skill set that many of our employees have. So, for example, we were working with one large global services organization, and they ran an organizational-wide competition to source ideas on how to leverage generative AI. And they asked for a mix of ideas, efficiency, productivity, but also new growth ideas. 99% of the ideas that they received were about increasing efficiency of their work. Only 1% were about new solutions, new growth opportunities. And this is, again, I would say, unfortunately, very common, because a lot of organizations struggle to imagine how they can go about pursuing new market needs. So let's switch gears now and talk about how can we really decide where the best opportunities are for the use of AI, not only in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of growth. And how do we get our organization, our entire organization, thinking about those opportunities? So the most important thing, based on our experience, is to think about the use cases and opportunities as a portfolio. We often talk about, innovation portfolios, R&D portfolios, wanting to look like our investment portfolios, where we have, some low risk ideas, perhaps some quick wins, but we also have some higher risk, but higher reward opportunities as well. And certainly what we've found is that trying to maintain a more balanced portfolio between quick wins, where we can get some early learnings, not have to invest, hopefully, a lot of money, with longer term opportunities that have that bigger payoff are really important here. And we love this idea of, if you've worked with us in the past, we say it a lot, thinking big, but starting small. So thinking about the smaller pilots that we could run before we invest in the riskiest opportunities. So it's important as we approach our portfolio to not just think about it being balanced, but also what is the sequencing of the investments where we can learn the most. Another thing to keep in mind, I've mentioned this before, is the cost. There are some use cases where the cost is pretty high, or perhaps where we're dealing with very sensitive data like PII, where we may, even though they may have a shorter term payoff, we may want to treat them more like a longer term payoff because of the costs associated with that. So putting in place some type of philosophy around what you want your portfolio of AI opportunities to look like is really job one. And then job two is to create a governance process to align your firm's leaders and employees on the vision you have for your portfolio, your goals that you have for generative AI, and then how you're going to make decisions about where to invest and where to perhaps delay investment until you learn more information. Now, once you've outlined kind of your portfolio thesis and you have a governance process in place, it's time to go through and evaluate each of the ideas. And this is where developing and cultivating what we at Vecteris call a product mindset can be incredibly helpful. So I'll unpack what we mean by that when we talk about a product mindset, and then how organizations can focus on this. So the first thing is to focus on that upper left box, customers' urgent and expensive problems. Oh, and this is one where we've got a little bit of a typo. It's listed twice. Apologies for that. But that shouldn't take away the teaching point that this is where we should always start. Identifying our customers' most urgent and expensive problems, and really starting with the customer problem, not the solution. And the reason why I mention this is because right now, if you're like a lot of the leaders that you work with, every day you are getting requests for demos, for new tools, or for new features and tools that you've already purchased that are using GenAI that can help your business. And it can be very tempting to start with those solutions and then back your way into the problem that it's going to be solving, because the person's already knocking on your door. They're like, we have a solution. It's going to be great to make you more productive or to solve, to create new growth opportunities, improve operational efficiency, elevate the expertise, whatever the pitch is, they're spoon feeding it to you. It allows you to be a little bit lazy and not really critically think about, well, what are the most important problems that need to be solved? Once you've done that, the second thing, and this is again a key part of developing a product mindset, is identifying how we can uniquely create value. And for a lot of us, it's a couple of things. One is the proprietary data that we already have, and expertise that we already have within the organization that can train, especially when we're talking about AI models, in a more effective way than other organizations who perhaps don't have the same type of data or expertise that we have. The other way that we may create value is by bundling this with existing services that we already offer, especially if we're looking at customer segments, serving customer segments where we already have relationships. But again, thinking very critically about, do we have something unique here, or is this just going to be a me too? And I will say I've seen a lot of what I consider to be Me Too announcements, especially across the last 6 to 9 months by firms, where I question whether or not the investment that they're making in the solutions that they're talking about really solve urgent and expensive customer problems or are unique in some way. The third one, and this is in the lower left, is to rapidly experiment to validate our hypotheses. And this is one where that may be a very new muscle for a lot of us who historically have not really had to cultivate, a culture of innovation where learning, rapid prototyping are not things that we're used to doing. But when we're in an environment like we are right now with AI, where things are changing every day, it's important that we are in a position to make assumptions about how we think the market may or may respond to an investment or a new product or solution, and then quickly test those assumptions before we invest too much money or run too far down the path. And then the last one in the lower right is to collaborate openly and disseminate learnings. Again, this may be one, and no worries if it's you, but some organizations struggle with where they've had a culture of, let's call it, individual heroics, and haven't been as good around, especially across different practice silos, sharing information and what they're learning. But this is certainly one of those times where we want to try to knock down those silos, disseminate what we are learning, and positioning in our learnings as learnings. We had this hypothesis that this may be a useful tool to bundle into our solutions that we have with our clients. We tested it. Here's how we tested it, and we found out yes or no. And here's what we're doing differently now. So that type of communication, dissemination, really, really important behavior to encourage in our organizations to help us make decisions about where to start with those use cases. All right, what is not on this slide is digital literacy. And that is something that we talked about certainly a lot before GenAI came on the scene, but now we are beating that drum almost daily as how important that is to helping your organization really embrace the new opportunities. Very rarely are technologies like this used to transform your business from a top-down fashion. You may need the top managing negotiations with the large tech providers so you can get access to the technology as early as possible for the best rate as possible. But the real use cases and hopefully exciting learning should be coming from across the organization, the bottom, the middle, and the top. And that means that we need to take our digital literacy, I think, much more seriously than perhaps we've taken it in the past. And I would argue that includes making it an important factor for hiring decisions and making it an important factor for performance review and promotion decisions. Now, I use the word or the term digital literacy very deliberately, rather than talking about digital fluency. So we don't need to turn everyone in our organization into people who are fluent in how AI works. But we do need them to be at the level of literacy where they can understand roughly how it works and how it can be applied to improve not only their day-to-day work, but also to help solve customers' urgent and expensive problems. So one that's not here on the slide, but one that I am talking about much more frequently is that digital literacy piece. All right. Now let's talk about change management. And I don't want to sugarcoat this. Transforming your professional services organization with AI is a significant change. It is attainable, but it's going to require a lot of forethought, time, and investment. And so if that is not a path that you want to run down, let's have that conversation earlier rather than later. Because what I hate to see is people invest in the technology but not invest in the change management. And if you're not going to invest in the technology, let's also have a conversation about how you're going to survive in an environment where 41% of professional services work, at least right now, can be automated. But really important to understand the change management implications. And I've listed here just a few of the ones that should be in your playbook as you're thinking about this. Number one, I mentioned this earlier, workforce transformation. So this means thinking about what new roles, new skills are needed, and what skills and roles perhaps are not needed or are less important. So a good example would be business domain knowledge. We will need that and continue to need that to check and edit the quality of work created by generative AI. Right now, that is something that business domain knowledge, understanding that context is very, very important. Product mindset skills, these capabilities, very, very important as well. Things that probably are less important are those more mundane, repetitive tasks and roles that do those, including administrative roles. Now, honestly, I do think that this is an area where things are still rapidly shifting, and that the new skills that we need won't be really apparent for another 18 to 24 months. But that said, I do think we can all agree that new behaviors are needed, that the pace of change is very fast right now, which requires a nimbleness of thinking and behavior. And if we are still rewarding people for behaviors that perhaps get in the way of us being nimble and open to change, then we've got to think about how do we stop doing that. And that gets to the second point, which is around culture. If you've worked with us in the past, you know we talk a lot about the importance of creating a product-friendly culture in our services organizations if we want to use technology to scale. And also that the cultural attributes that make us great as services organizations may actually get in our way as we try to transform using technology. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but think about, for example, earlier when I talked about the importance of learning and iterating quickly. So that means we have to kind of come at things in a very curious beginner's mindset. And for a lot of us who've distinguished ourselves across our professional careers by being experts, this could be very difficult to say, I don't know, but I'm going to go learn, I'm going to go test. So big culture change on the horizon as well, and I'll double click on that more in a second. Number 3 here on the page, go to market. Most frequent question we've been fielding last few months is around help. I need to change my pricing. Now that I'm using AI to make my work more efficient, all of these engagement letters that I have out where we bill based on time and materials don't make sense anymore. So thinking about, do we need to increase, if we're still going to use billable hours, our bill rates to account for all the new tech investments that we're making? Or, for example, what we like to talk about is migrating to more flat fee, value-based pricing, or some type of hybrid of that plus billable hours, as we're learning more about how the mix of work that we've done in the past will now be automated. So very important to be having those conversations and be very transparent with our customers as we're talking about the increase not only in perhaps technology spend that we're having to undertake, but hopefully the increase in value. Going back to that page we talked about earlier about elevating our expertise, we can now do higher quality analysis, more accurate analysis, have access to better information, but that needs to be a conversation, which gets to client expectations. So beyond pricing, organizations need to be prepared to discuss how you're assuring deliverable quality and accuracy if you're using AI, and also how you're protecting sensitive data and information. Now, again, hopefully you know that's table stakes, but important to be having those conversations, be making it very transparent, and also to be bringing clients in very early into your ideation process and development of new AI use cases to not only build their trust, but also to make better investment decisions, learn more about their problems like we talked about. And then the last important part of our change management playbook will be our performance measures and rewards. So, we talked about the importance of making digital literacy something that's very high on our list when we think about new hires, promotions, and so on. And asking that bigger question of whether or not our measures, our incentives, our promotion criteria, even the success stories that we share, are they encouraging the use of these new technology tools, or are they inadvertently discouraging it? So, for example, I had a conversation with a very large accounting firm about how they're changing to not just focus on top line revenue, but to also focus on margin, because the margin will encourage faster adoption of these tools versus just focusing on the top line revenue, which might actually discourage it, at least in the short term, we would argue. Other things that you might want to think about, talking about celebrating, measuring in some way, and rewarding are again, the learning, speed of testing, collaboration, failing intelligently. And if you're not, how can you start doing that? So let's double click on the culture change piece. Like I said, we would. Like I said, the cultures of most successful professional services firms value currently things that may get in our way if we want to successfully leverage AI. So, for example, right now, a lot of us pride ourselves on being experts and always knowing the answer. But again, we've got to put on that learning hat, take that scientist mindset, that beginner's mindset, when we're in a space like this and trying to figure out what are the best opportunities for us to use this technology. That's a big change. Also, if we are going to iterate quickly and run intelligent experiments and perhaps fail quickly as well with some of that rapid prototyping, we have to lower our bar around what good looks like. So that gold standard that a lot of us have for our deliverables may need to be lower in order for us to iterate quickly and learn from our clients. And it may mean, we're showing our clients things that are somewhat half-baked in order to get their feedback quickly and bring them into the co-design and development process. And then the last one there on the far right is this willingness to cannibalize. Because, and again, we do think that, professional services up until now has not been significantly disrupted by technology, but that is about to change. So as we're thinking about new opportunities, thinking very carefully about where might we be disrupted by competitors, and where could we perhaps get in front of that and disrupt ourselves. And this, of course, is where I love to talk about the very classic iPod to iPhone story, where Apple deliberately cannibalized their iPod business in order to release the iPhone that could also carry music, but make phone calls, take photos, and so on with the iPhone. Because we do believe with this technology, if we're not willing to at least entertain it or think about how we strategically reposition ourselves in the market, somebody else will be out there, and you're probably seeing them already. Last thing I'll leave you with, just this great quote from a law firm managing partner that I was talking to about this issue of how to manage client expectations. And it was kind of wrapped up in the pricing conversation, but it was also talking about how do we really bring our clients in to help co-design and co-develop with us. And he said something very, very wise. He said, Eisha, we're focusing the conversation on the client problems we're solving and the value we create. We found that our clients care a lot less about how we solve their problem. They just want their problem solved. And I thought this was such good wisdom, especially as we think about, again, that product mindset where we need to focus on customer problems as opposed to just the number of hours and number of bodies that we might be throwing at a client. So I do want to leave a few minutes for Q&A. I know we have a couple questions that have come in. Would be remiss if I didn't make a pitch for our AI accelerator that's kicking off in April 2024. Runs for 12 weeks. You get the opportunity to conceptualize, test, and prototype an MVP of an AI-powered solution. You'll be with other professional services leaders who are doing the same, again, across those subsegments that I talked about. And our focus really is for you, especially if it's a new solution, to at least identify potential paying beta customers by the end of the 12 weeks. And this uses our proven approach that we've written about and have run many, many others through in our other accelerators, that's really tailored for B2B professional services firms who are thinking differently about how they create value. And again, not just thinking about creating value through their expertise like they have historically, but also through intellectual property, technology, and so on. And you can see here a couple of quotes of current participators in our accelerators. That QR code there on the right is for you to use to schedule time to learn more about that. So would love to work with you and invite you to learn more there. All right, let's go to questions. Have a few minutes left. Let's see. Lane said, are firms clear on how much they share with their clients that this was done using AI? Oh, so it probably took less time to arrive at it and my bill should be less, et cetera. Yes. So the best ones are. And my recommendation is that, yes, you have that conversation. So our clients aren't dummies. And if they're not going to hear it from you, they will hear from your competitors about how you are using it. So definitely the more transparent you can be, the better. And again, this puts us, I admit, in a place of discomfort because we are not used to telling our clients, we are still trying to figure this out. Will you co-design, co-create with us? But I think being more transparent is a better answer for the long term, even if in the short term, we end up having to take a little bit of a haircut. Now, I think where we also need to be transparent, and I mentioned this earlier, is the additional spend that we have on technology as a result of using this and how that affects our bill rates. And what I would say the best firms are doing this year, Lane, is they're taking a hybrid approach and starting to experiment with using a little bit more value-based pricing, fixed fee pricing, and then still keeping some billable hours, but revisiting those conversations around the bill rates. So that's what we are seeing and what I would recommend. Let's see, any other questions, team, that have come in from LinkedIn or from the chat? Okay. Well, I hope this was useful. Again, if you would like to learn more about our accelerator kicking off, next one kicks off in April, please use the QR code. And as always, thank you so much for your time. It's just such a joy to talk to all of you about this and look forward to our next conversation.